Welcome to Jazz Piano Skills. I'm Dr. Bob Lawrence. As always, it's time for you to turn off your eyes and turn on your ears. No video, no distracting images, no pop-ups, no advertisements. Just great educational content for you to hear, for you to discover, learn, and play. During the last couple of weeks, we've explored the chord construction of the 5 primary sounds in music: major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. I stressed in each of those lessons that the study of chords is not the same as the study of voicings. When studying chords, one looks at how various musical sounds are constructed, their similarities and their differences, how they are built from the ground up, the root, third, the fifth, and so on. On the other hand, when you study voicings, you are exploring various ways to actually play the chords. In other words, exploring various ways to arrange the notes of the chord so that they produce a stylistically correct sound for the genre of music you are wanting to perform. Today, it's time to look at voicings. We are going to discover, learn, and play shell voicings used by all professional jazz pianists. So let's dig in. I believe that the study of voicings is the most confusing and frustrating of all jazz piano skills. At least it is for most people. At least for the people that I have taught over the past 30 years. Here's why. Voicings are typically presented and discussed in jazz piano lessons and in jazz theory books as if there are countless possibilities, and they're presented with such vagueness regarding practice approaches both physically and mentally. In fact, that is where most jazz piano teachers fall way short. They're great at telling you what to practice while offering very few details, if any at all, about how to practice. So, anytime you group together countless possibilities with vague practice guidance and guidelines, you end up with confusion and frustration. I tell all of my students that without a clearly defined way of constructing chord voicings and a systematic approach to practicing them, you will get wrapped around the axle very quickly. Your thoughts and voicings will quickly become like a tangled fishing line. So today, I want to provide you with a clear and concise way of playing 3-note left-hand traditional shell voicings. Next week, I'll do the same for 3-note contemporary shell voicings. Traditional shell voicings. I have already explained what the word voicing implies. We need, however, before going any further, take a moment and explain what is meant by the words traditional and shell. Traditional implies that the voicings are going to include the 3rd and the 7th of the scale from which the chord comes from. For example, a traditional C major voicing will include the note E, the 3rd, of the C major scale, and the note B, the 7th, of the C major scale. In next week's podcast, we'll be exploring voicings that may exclude either the 3rd or the 7th, or both. I label those types of voicings as contemporary. Shell implies that the voicing hints at the sound by using a select few of the notes from the scale from which the chord derives. For example, a classical traditional C minor voicing uses 3 notes: E flat, which is the 3rd, B flat, the 7th, and D, the 9th. No root, no 5th, no 11th, no 13th. Just 3 carefully selected notes to imply C minor, a shell. Now that we have addressed the meaning behind the words traditional, shell, and voicing, it's time to put together our traditional shell voicings. We will do so for each of the primary sounds of music: major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Each voicing today will adhere to the following guidelines. Number 1, all voicings will consist of 3 notes. 3 notes that are played in your left hand. Keep in mind, your right hand will be playing the melody of the song you're playing or your improvisational ideas. Number 2, each voicing today will include the 3rd and 7th of the scale from which the chord comes from. And number 3, there will be 2 voicing options available for each chord. So again, number 1, all voicings will consist of 3 notes. All voicings will include the 3rd and 7th. And there will be 2 voicing options for each chord. I will be building the traditional shell voicings for the C family of chords: C major, C dominant, C minor, C half diminished, and C diminished. I am assuming you are comfortable with the various modes of each of the sounds. If you are, fantastic. The voicing structures I present today will be much easier to comprehend. If you are not, then simply go with the flow and learn the voicings as I outline them. In a future podcast, I will be discussing modes in detail. So here we go. C major, using the Ionian Mode. Option 1, E, which is the 3rd, the note B, the 7th, and the note D, which is the 9th. 3, 7, 9, or E, B, D. Option 2, we're going to start with the 7th, which is the B. Now play the 3rd, which is E, and add the 5th, which is G. 7, 3, 5, B, E, G. So option 1 for C major, E, B, and D, 3, 7, 9. Option 2 for C major, B, E, G, 7, 3, 5. C dominant voicing, using the Mixolydian Mode. Option 1, E, which is the 3rd, B flat, the 7th, and D, the 9th. E, B flat, D, 3, 7, 9. Option 2 for C dominant. We're going to start with the 7th, which is B flat, add the 3rd, which is E, add the 5th, which is G. 7, 3, 5, or B flat, E, G. C minor voicing, using Dorian Mode. We're going to start with the 3rd, E flat. We're going to add our 7th, B flat, and then our 9th, which is D. So we get the 3rd, 7, and the 9th, E flat, B flat, D. Option 2 for C minor. We begin with the 7th, which is B flat, add the 3rd, E flat, and then the 5th, which is G. B flat, E flat, G. 7, 3, 5. C half diminished, using the Locrian Mode. We begin with option 1, which is the 3rd, E flat. Then we go to the 7th, B flat. And then we add the 9th, D flat. E flat, B flat, D flat, 3, 7, 9. Option 2 for C half diminished. We begin with B flat, the 7th, add the 3rd, E flat, add the 5th, G flat. B flat, E flat, G flat, 7, 3, 5. And finally, C diminished, using the 7th mode of the harmonic minor scale. We begin with the 3rd, E flat, the 7th, which will be the note A, and the 9th, D flat. 3, 7, 9. E flat, A, D flat. Option 2 for C diminished, we begin with the 7th, which is going to be A, the 3rd, E flat, and the 5th, G flat. A, E flat, G flat, 7, 3, 5. Did you notice how each traditional shell voicing for each sound, major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished, is built using the 3rd, 7th, 9th, or the 7th, 3rd, and 5th? In doing so, we now have a systematic and neatly organized way to think about traditional shell voicings, making it so much easier to transpose to the remaining 11 chord families. Let's listen to how both voicing options 3-7-9 and 7-3-5 sound when placed into a musical context. Major 3-7-9, 7-3-5. Dominant 3-7-9, dominant 7-3-5. Minor 3-7-9, 7-3-5. Half diminished 3-7-9, 7-3-5. And diminished 3-7-9, 7-3-5. Major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and diminished. Here's what they sound like when comping. And now with a little improvisation on top of those voicings. Pretty cool. A clean sound. A traditional jazz sound. Now, your homework for this week is to construct the traditional shell voicings for the remaining 11 chord families. Remember, paper practice first, physical application second. Taking the time to map out the voicings on paper will pay huge dividends for you when you begin to play them on the piano. Get in a habit of thinking through all jazz piano scales first before you try to play them. A jazz piano scale must be clearly understood conceptually before you can master it physically. I hope you have found this JPS podcast lesson on traditional shell voicings to be beneficial. If you are wanting to study this topic extensively, I encourage you to check out my Jazz Piano Scales curriculum at jazzpianoscales.com. My courses are packed with comprehensive lessons that explore essential jazz piano skills. Each lesson in each course contains detailed instruction and illustrations, in-depth educational talks, interactive learning media, traditional guides and worksheets, high-definition video demonstrations in all 12 keys, play-along tracks, professional and personal educational support, and of course, mobile access to all courses and lessons on any of your smart devices. That's it for now. Enjoy traditional jazz, shell voicings, and until next week, enjoy the journey, and most of all, have fun as you discover, learn, and play jazz piano.